Yuna stepped off the transport shuttle and took her first real look at Galactic Station, Nexus 7. The massive structure stretched in every direction. A spinning wheel of metal and light that housed beings from 47 different worlds. She adjusted the strap of her gym bag on her shoulder and smiled. 3 months of travel through space, and she had finally arrived at humanity's newest diplomatic posting. The gravity felt slightly off as she walked through the arrival terminal. Not wrong exactly, but lighter than home. Each step had a little more bounce than she expected. Yuna had read the briefing materials during the journey. The station operated on something called Universal Standard Gravity, which was supposed to be comfortable for most species. For humans, it was about 20% lighter than Earth normal. Ambassador Quan met her at the processing gate. He was a tall man with gray hair and a warm smile. Behind him stood his assistant, Minho, who was busy managing 3 different data tablets at once. "Welcome to Nexus 7, Quan said, shaking her hand. "I hope the journey wasn't too difficult." "Not at all, sir," Yuna replied, "though I'm very ready to stretch my legs properly." Minho looked up from his tablets. "You're the fitness instructor, right? Good luck finding a decent gym here. Most species don't really exercise the way we do." Yuna laughed. "I'll manage. I always do." The human section of the station was small but comfortable. Earth had only been part of the Galactic Council for 8 months, so the embassy was still new. Yuna's quarters were modest, but had everything she needed. Most importantly, they had enough floor space for her to do yoga. She spent the first few days settling in and learning the layout of the station. The corridors were wide and tall, built to accommodate species of all different sizes. She saw beings that looked like floating jellyfish, others that seemed to be made of crystal, and one species that rolled instead of walked. Every single one of them stared at her as she passed by. On her 4th morning at the station, Yuna decided it was time to resume her exercise routine. She had gone too long without a proper run, and she could feel the restlessness building in her muscles. The station directory mentioned a fitness facility on level 14. So she headed there after breakfast. The facility was enormous and mostly empty. A bored-looking attendant at the front desk barely glanced at her as she entered. The alien had 6 eyes arranged in a circle around its head and skin that shimmered like oil on water. "All areas are open," the attendant said in a flat voice. "Emergency stop buttons are marked in red. Please do not exceed your species' recommended gravity tolerance." Yuna nodded and moved past the desk. The main gym area had equipment she didn't recognize. Strange machines with too many joints, platforms that seemed to vibrate, and something that looked like a pool filled with thick gas instead of water. A few aliens were scattered around the space, moving slowly through exercises that seemed more like gentle stretching than actual workouts. Then she saw the doors at the back of the facility. Heavy metal doors with warning signs in multiple languages. She walked closer and read the signs. High gravity training facility. Authorized personnel only. Danger. Extreme gravitational forces. Her interest was immediately caught. She pressed her hand against the access panel, and to her surprise, it opened. The door slid back to reveal a corridor lined with more doors, each one labeled with a number and the letter G. She understood quickly. These were gravity chambers, each one set to a different level of gravitational force. The first few rooms were occupied. Through the windows, she could see massive creatures that reminded her of rhinoceroses, moving slowly through what looked like strength exercises. The displays above their doors showed 2G and 3G. Further down the corridor, the rooms were empty. She peered through the window of one marked 5G. It was a simple room with a padded floor and walls. Perfect for running. The space was about the size of a running track back home. Yuna checked her fitness watch. Her heart rate was normal. She felt good. And honestly, The Earth's standard gravity she had grown up with was 1G. This station's normal gravity at 1. 2G was even lighter than that. She had been feeling like she was walking on the moon for days. Maybe some heavier gravity would feel more like home. She entered the 5G chamber and sealed the door behind her. For a moment, nothing happened. Then she felt it. The weight came down on her like someone had draped a heavy blanket over her entire body. Her shoulders dropped. Her knees bent slightly. Every part of her suddenly weighed 5 times what it normally did. Yuna took a breath and straightened up. It was heavy, yes, but not impossible. She had done weighted vest training back on Earth that felt similar to this. She did a few test movements. A squat. A jump. A few arm circles. Everything worked fine, just with more effort. She smiled and pulled out her music player, fitting the earbuds into her ears. Her favorite running playlist started up, and she began to jog. The first few steps were awkward as she adjusted to the weight. But within a minute, she had found her rhythm. Her breathing deepened. Her heart rate climbed. This was exactly what she needed. A real workout, not the floating feeling she had been experiencing around the station. Yuna settled into her usual pace. 5 kilometers was her standard morning distance. In this gravity, it would take longer and burn more calories, but that was fine. She had time. Outside the chamber, in the facility's monitoring room, a maintenance worker named Prexel was doing his routine checks. Prexel was a Veloth, a species from a low-gravity world. His people were insectoid, with thin limbs and large, multifaceted eyes. He stood only 3 feet tall, and the station's 1-2G environment was already difficult for him. He wore a support exoskeleton, just to move around comfortably. He was reviewing the power consumption displays when he noticed something odd. The 5G chamber was active. That was unusual. Only the Growth used that room, and they had scheduled training sessions. He checked the calendar. No Growth training today. Curious, Prexel pulled up the camera feed for the 5G chamber. What he saw made his blood run cold. A human. One of the new species. The fragile ones with the soft skin and weak bones that everyone whispered about. She was inside the 5G chamber. And she wasn't lying on the floor dying. She was running. Actually running, like it was nothing. Prexel's 6 hands began to shake. Everyone knew that humans were from a light-gravity world. They were delicate, breakable. This human should be crushed flat by now. Her bones should be snapping. Her organs should be failing. But she was just jogging along, looking almost relaxed. He slammed his primary hand down on the emergency alert button. Alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The automated system immediately sent distress calls to station security, medical teams, and the facility director. Prexel grabbed his communication device. Emergency in high-gravity wing. Human in the 5G chamber. She's moving. I think she doesn't realize what's happening. Someone needs to get her out before she dies. Within seconds, the facility was chaos. Security officers came running from 3 different directions. Medical personnel arrived with emergency equipment. The facility director, a being named Vexlith, who looked like a 7-foot-tall octopus, flowed down the corridor at maximum speed. "Where is the victim?" Vexlith demanded, his tentacles writhing with agitation. Chamber 5. Prexel pointed with 4 hands simultaneously. "She's still moving. I don't understand how." The director rushed to the window and looked inside. His large eyes went even wider. The human was indeed running, jogging in steady circles around the chamber. She had small devices in her ears and seemed to be completely unaware of the emergency response forming outside her door. "Get a medical pod ready," Vexlith ordered. "When we open that door, she might collapse immediately. The trauma could be catastrophic." A medical officer named Prin, whose crystalline body chimed softly as she moved, prepared her scanning equipment. "I'm reading her vital signs through the chamber wall," she said, confusion evident in her voice. "Her heart rate is elevated but stable. There are no signs of bone fracture. No internal bleeding. This doesn't make sense." "Open the door," Vexlith commanded. Carefully. They disabled the gravity field first, bringing the chamber back down to station normal. Then they unsealed the door. Medical teams stood ready with emergency stretchers and trauma equipment. Yuna pulled out her earbuds as the door opened. She was slightly sweaty and breathing hard, but she was smiling. She had completed 3 of her 5 kilometers. "Oh, hello," she said cheerfully, looking at the crowd of aliens staring at her in horror. "Is something wrong? Is there a fire drill?" The silence that followed Yuna's question was absolute. 15 different beings from 8 different species stood frozen in the corridor, staring at her like she was a ghost. Some of them had their mouths open. Others had whatever they used for mouths open. One of the security officers had actually dropped his weapon. Director Vexlith was the first to recover. His tentacles stopped their agitated writhing and slowly curled into what might have been confusion. You were in the 5 gravity chamber," he said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "For how long?" Yuna checked her fitness watch. "About 12 minutes? I was planning to do 5 kilometers, but I guess I should ask if that's okay first." "Sorry, I didn't see any reservation system." "Reservation system," Vexlith repeated faintly. One of his tentacles went to his head in what looked like the alien equivalent of rubbing temples. "You were exercising, voluntarily, in 5 times gravity." "Well, yes," Yuna said. She was starting to feel like she had done something wrong, though she couldn't figure out what. "The station gravity is a bit light for me. I wanted a proper workout." Medical Officer Prin moved forward, her crystalline body making soft musical sounds with each step. "I need to scan you immediately. You may have internal injuries you cannot feel yet. Adrenaline can mask serious trauma." "I feel fine," Yuna protested, but Prin was already running a scanner over her body. The device beeped and hummed, displaying information in a language Yuna couldn't read. Prin's body flashed several different colors as she read the results. "This cannot be correct," Prin said. "The scanner shows no damage at all. No bone fractures. No muscle tears. No organ stress. Her bone density is..." She paused, flashing a bright blue color. "Her bone density is 3 times what I would expect from a being her size. Her muscle structure is incredibly efficient. Her cardiovascular system is operating well within normal parameters despite the elevated heart rate." "Maybe your scanner is broken?" suggested one of the security officers. Prin's body flashed an offended purple. "My scanner is perfectly calibrated. I just used it this morning. Unless..." She looked at Yuna with what might have been suspicion. "What is your species' homeworld gravity?" 1G, Yuna answered. "I mean, that's what we call it. 1 gravity. Earth standard." The crowd of aliens exchanged looks. Several of them made sounds that Yuna guessed were gasps or exclamations. Prexel, the maintenance worker who had triggered the alarm, covered his face with all 6 of his hands. 1 full gravity? Vexlith said. "Your homeworld has 1 full standard gravity unit? That's classified as a high-gravity world. Only the Drauth come from a world that heavy." "Oh," Yuna said. She remembered reading something about that in the briefing materials, but she hadn't really thought about it. "I guess humans are used to heavier gravity than most species?" "Most species evolved on worlds with 0.4 to 0.8 gravity," Prin explained. "Anything above 0.9 is considered extreme. Very few species can survive in 1G conditions without support equipment. And you live there. You evolved there. And you were just jogging in 5 times your already excessive home gravity. Vexlith added. His tentacles had started writhing again, like it was a normal morning activity. It was a bit heavy, Una admitted. But not that bad? I mean, I've done weighted vest training that felt similar. Weighted vest training, Vexlith repeated. He turned to his security chief, a large being covered in thick fur. Close the high-gravity facility. I need to file a report. And someone please escort this human back to her quarters. I'm not finished with my run, Una said. You are finished. Several aliens said at once. 20 minutes later, Una sat in the medical center while Prin ran every test she could think of. Blood samples, tissue scans, cardiovascular stress tests, bone density imaging. Each test came back showing the same thing. Una was completely healthy. Better than healthy, actually. Her body was built like a machine designed for exactly the kind of stress she had just put it through. I don't understand, Prin said, reviewing the results for the third time. Your species is so soft. You have no exoskeleton, no armored hide. You look fragile. But these readings suggest you're one of the most physically robust species I've ever scanned. We evolved as hunters, Una explained. She had learned this in school, though she had never thought about it from an alien perspective before. Persistence hunters. We would chase prey for hours until it collapsed from exhaustion. So we needed strong bones, efficient muscles, and really good cooling systems. Cooling systems? Una pointed to her still damp shirt. Sweating. We can regulate our body temperature really well, which means we can run for a long time without overheating. Prin's body flashed through several colors, which Una was learning meant she was thinking hard. Fascinating. Terrifying, but fascinating. Meanwhile, in the station's administrative center, an emergency meeting of the Safety Council was taking place. The council was made up of representatives from various species, all dedicated to keeping the station safe for everyone who lived there. Today, they were very concerned. Councilor Threen, who breathed methane and wore an environmental suit, was leading the meeting. This incident represents a serious safety violation, he said through his suit speakers. The human accessed a restricted facility and endangered herself. But she wasn't endangered, pointed out another counselor. According to the medical reports, she was fine. She didn't know she would be fine, Threen argued. For any other species on this station, entering that chamber would be fatal. She should not have been able to access it without proper authorization and safety training. The access panel let her in, someone said. Then the access panel is malfunctioning, Threen snapped. Or more likely, the human override codes are too broad. Regardless, this cannot happen again. What if another human tries the same thing? What if they're not as robust as this one? The council debated for over an hour. Finally, they reached a decision. They would file a formal complaint with the human embassy. The complaint would cite multiple violations: reckless endangerment, misuse of facilities, causing unnecessary panic, and wasting emergency resources. Ambassador Quan received the complaint in his office. He read it twice, then started laughing. Minho, working at his desk nearby, looked up in confusion. Sir? What's funny? Quan handed him the complaint. They're upset because Una went jogging. Minho, read the document. In 5G. They're upset because she went jogging in 5 times Earth gravity, which is admittedly heavier than normal, Quan said. But not impossible. I know military personnel who train in higher gravity than that. Should I tell them that? Quan thought about it. He pulled up the security footage of the incident and watched it again. Una jogging in circles, looking slightly tired but not distressed. The aliens outside the chamber, panicking like the world was ending. The medical teams preparing for a catastrophic injury that never came. No, he said finally. We need to handle this differently. They don't understand what humans are capable of. To them, we look weak and fragile. They think they're protecting us. So what do? Quan smiled. We educate them. Set up a meeting with the Safety Council. Tell them we'll address their concerns. And then we give them a demonstration they'll never forget. Word of the incident spread through the station faster than light. By evening, everyone had heard the story. A human had survived the 5G chamber. Not just survived, but exercised in it, voluntarily in the corridors and gathering spaces. Aliens discussed this new information in hushed voices. Some thought it was a rumor, an exaggeration. Others believed it, but thought the human must have been specially enhanced, perhaps with cybernetics or genetic modification. A few species started looking at humans differently. The Growth commander Vorak heard the story from one of his warriors. Vorak was from a 1G world himself, and he knew how hard it was to function in high gravity. The fact that a human, who looked so much smaller and weaker than a Growth, could casually jog in 5G made him deeply curious. That night, Yuna ate dinner in the human embassy cafeteria, completely unaware of the controversy she had caused. She was joined by Hyari, another human who worked as a xenobiologist on the station. So I heard you almost gave some aliens heart attacks today, Hyari said, grinning. It was an accident. Yuna protested. I just wanted to go running. How was I supposed to know they'd all freak out? They think we're delicate, Hyari explained. Most species here are from lighter gravity worlds than Earth. To them, we're like, I don't know, like living on Jupiter or something. Yuna thought about that. Huh. I guess I never really considered it from their perspective. Well, you're about to get a lot more attention, Hyari said. I heard the ambassador is planning some kind of demonstration. You might end up being famous. Great, Yuna said without enthusiasm. I just wanted a good workout. But whether she wanted it or not, things were about to change. The Safety Council's complaint had been filed. The ambassador's response was prepared. And tomorrow, the entire station would learn what humans were really capable of. The station's main assembly arena had never been so crowded. Representatives from all 47 member species filled the viewing galleries, arranged in sections that accommodated their various environmental needs. Some sat in standard chairs. Others floated in bubbles of different atmospheres. A few were submerged in tanks of liquid. All of them were here to watch the humans explain themselves. Ambassador Quan stood at the center of the arena floor, looking calm and professional in his diplomatic uniform. Behind him, a series of transparent chambers had been set up, each one clearly labeled with different gravity levels. 1G, 2G, 3G, 7-G.COUNCILLOR. Thoreen spoke first, his methane suit making his voice sound slightly mechanical. Ambassador Quan, thank you for agreeing to address the Safety Council's concerns. We hope you understand that our complaint was filed with the best intentions. We simply wish to prevent harm to your people. I understand completely, Quan said, his voice amplified so everyone could hear. And I appreciate your concern for human safety. However, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about human physical capabilities. Today, we'd like to demonstrate exactly what our species can do. He gestured, and 4 humans walked onto the arena floor. Yuna was first, wearing comfortable exercise clothes and her usual sneakers. Next came Hyari, dressed similarly. Then Taiyang, a security officer with a military background, his muscles visible even through his shirt. Finally, Jiho, a cargo handler who was nearly 6.5 feet tall and built like a wall. These 4 volunteers represent average humans, Kwa explained. Not enhanced, not modified, just normal people who exercise regularly. First, I'd like to establish a baseline. Yuna entered the 1G chamber. The door sealed behind her, and a holographic display above showed her vital signs for everyone to see. Heart rate, oxygen levels, temperature, everything. "This is one standard gravity unit," Quan said. "For humans, this is what we call Earth normal. This is the environment we evolved in." Yuna began to exercise. She did jumping jacks, push-ups, sit-ups, and burpees. She moved with easy confidence, her breathing steady. After 5 minutes of continuous exercise, she was barely sweating. The vital signs display showed elevated heart rate, but nothing concerning. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Most of the aliens were already impressed. 1G was high gravity for them. The fact that a human could exercise so easily, and it was surprising. "Now, let's increase the difficulty," Quan said. Yuna moved to the 2G chamber. This was twice Earth's gravity. For most species in the arena, this would be immediately fatal. Even the Growth, the strongest species present, found 2G challenging. The gravity activated, and Yuna's shoulders dipped slightly. She bounced on her toes a few times, adjusting. Then she started jogging. Around and around the chamber she went, maintaining a steady pace. Her breathing was harder now, and sweat began to show on her skin. But she was still moving, still in control. "As you can see," Quan said, 2G is more difficult for humans. We feel the weight, but we can function in it. Now, 3G. In the 3G chamber, Yuna slowed down. Her movements became more deliberate. She did modified exercises, squats and lunges, some light jogging. It was clearly hard work. Her face was red with effort, and sweat dripped from her hair. But she was still going. After 10 minutes, she gave a thumbs up to the crowd and exited the chamber. The audience was silent now. Even the species that naturally respected strength were stunned. 3G was crushing pressure. To exercise in it was incredible. "Now," Quan said, "let me show you what started this whole situation." Yuna entered the 5G chamber, and Hyeri joined her. The gravity activated, and both women staggered for a moment before straightening up. Then, incredibly, they began to jog together. Slowly, carefully, but jogging nonetheless. They even talked to each other between breaths, discussing their favorite music. Several aliens in the audience fainted. Medical teams had to carry them out. The low-gravity species couldn't even comprehend what they were seeing. Prin, the crystalline medical officer, was scanning the humans from her position in the gallery. "Impossible," she whispered. "Their bones should be breaking. Their hearts should be failing. But they're fine. Stressed, but fine." After 5 minutes in the 5G chamber, both women exited. They were exhausted, breathing hard, and needed to sit down. But they were smiling. "That was the exercise that caused the safety complaint," Quan said. "And now, I'd like to show you what a human trained for high-gravity work can do." Taiyang stepped forward. The former military officer rolled his shoulders and cracked his knuckles. He entered the 7G chamber, 7 times Earth's gravity, 7 times the weight humans evolved in. The pressure was immense. Taiyang dropped to one knee when it activated, then slowly, painfully, pushed himself back to standing. His face showed the strain, muscles trembling with effort. Then he started exercising. Modified movements, much slower than normal. But he did them. Push-ups where he could barely lift himself. Squats where he shook with each repetition. A careful, controlled walk around the chamber's perimeter. The audience was completely silent. Even Vorak, the massive Growth commander, was leaning forward in his seat, barely believing what he was seeing. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters," Quan explained while Taiyang worked. "We would chase prey across vast distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. This required efficient muscles, strong bones, excellent cooling systems, and cardiovascular systems that could maintain activity for hours. We are built for endurance in high-gravity conditions. Taiyang exited the 7G chamber after 3 minutes. He immediately collapsed on a bench, gasping for air. Medical staff rushed over, but he waved them away. "I'm fine," he panted. "Just give me a minute." "As you can see," Quan said, 7G is extremely difficult even for trained humans. We feel pain. We tire quickly. We are not invincible, but we can function in conditions that would kill most species instantly. Finally, Jiho stepped forward. The massive cargo handler approached a pile of containers that had been placed in the arena. Each container was marked with its weight in station standard units. These containers, Quan explained, normally require loading mechs or multiple workers to move. Jiho moved them by hand as part of his daily job. Jiho picked up a container marked at 400 kilos and carried it across the floor. He made it look easy. Then he did it again with a heavier one. And again. The audience watched in amazement as this human casually lifted weights that would require machinery for other species. "But that's in normal station gravity," Quan said. "Let's see what he can do in higher gravity." Jiho entered the 5G chamber. The containers were already inside, having been placed there earlier. Under 5 times normal gravity, each container now effectively weighed 5 times as much. The 400-kilo container now felt like 2,000 kilos. Jiho approached the container. He bent his knees, gripped the handles, and lifted. His whole body shook with the effort. Veins stood out on his neck and arms. But the container rose off the ground. He took one step, then another. He carried it 3 meters before setting it down. The arena erupted. Aliens were making sounds in hundreds of different languages, all expressing the same thing: complete and total shock. Commander Vorak stood up. The massive Growth warrior's voice boomed across the arena. "I wish to compete with the human." A hush fell over the crowd. Vorak climbed down from his seat and approached the arena floor. He was enormous, easily 8 feet tall and covered in thick, armored hide. His species was one of the few others that came from a 1G world, though they had evolved as grazers, not hunters. "I respect strength," Vorak said, looking at Taiyang. "My species prides itself on power, but I see now that we may have underestimated yours. I wish to test myself against you." Taiyang, who had recovered from his 7G effort, stood up. Next to Vorak, he looked small, but he nodded. "I accept." They entered the 7G chamber together. This time, the audience held its breath. 2 warriors from heavy gravity worlds, pushing themselves to their absolute limits. The gravity activated. Both beings dropped to their knees. Vorak's armored exoskeleton suit, which helped him move in station gravity, began to make warning sounds. The servos were straining under the increased load. Taiyang pushed himself up first. Vorak followed, but his movements were slower. His suit was fighting against him now, the machinery unable to handle the pressure. They attempted exercises side by side. Taiyang managed 3 push-ups. Vorak managed one before his suit's servos sparked and failed. He collapsed, and the emergency shutdown brought the gravity back to normal. Vorak lay on the chamber floor, breathing heavily. Taiyang knelt beside him. "Are you okay?" The Growth warrior laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "I am humbled. Your species... You are stronger than you look. Much stronger." Medical teams helped Vorak out of the chamber. His suit was damaged, but he was unharmed. He clasped Taiyang's hand in what was clearly a gesture of respect. Ambassador Quan addressed the crowd again. "I hope this demonstration has clarified things. Humans are from a high-gravity world. We can function in conditions that most species cannot. This doesn't make us better or worse. It simply makes us different. We ask that you understand our capabilities and trust us to know our own limits." Counselor Threen stood up. The demonstration changed everything overnight. Yuna woke up the morning after to find that her personal communication device had exploded with messages, interview requests, questions from researchers, even a few messages from aliens asking for autographs. She stared at the device in confusion while eating breakfast. "Welcome to fame," Hayari said, sitting down across from her with a cup of coffee. "I got about 300 messages myself, and I was just the backup jogger. You're the one who started all this." "I just wanted to exercise," Yuna said for what felt like the 100th time. The galactic information networks were full of discussions about humans. Video clips from the demonstration had been viewed billions of times across hundreds of worlds. Different species had very different reactions to what they had seen. The Paltraxian Assembly, a coalition of low-gravity species, issued a formal statement expressing concern about human presence on multi-species stations. "We must consider the safety implications," their representative said in a broadcast. "A species capable of functioning in such extreme conditions could pose a danger to more delicate beings. We recommend that humans be confined to heavy gravity zones for the protection of all." Ambassador Quan responded immediately. "Humans have lived peacefully among many species for months now. Physical capability does not equal aggression. We hope the Paltraxian Assembly will judge us by our actions, not our strength." Other species had more positive reactions. The Growth Warrior Council sent an official request to Earth, asking to establish an exchange program. Commander Varak himself recorded a message that was broadcast across the station. "I have fought beside warriors from many worlds," Varak said. "But yesterday, I learned humility. The humans are strong in ways my people are not. We have power, but they have endurance. We have armor, but they have will. I would be honored to learn from them and teach them what we know." The commercial sector reacted quickly. Within 3 days of the demonstration, Yuna received a formal offer from Station Fitness Corporation, the company that managed the gym facilities. They wanted to hire her as an instructor, not just for humans, but for any species brave enough to try. She met with their representative, a floating jellyfish-like being named Queller, in one of the station's conference rooms. Queller's translator device gave him a pleasant, bubbling voice. "We've seen tremendous interest in human exercise methods," Queller explained. "Beings from 17 different species have contacted us asking if they can train like humans. Of course, most of them can't do anything close to what you demonstrated. But we believe there's value in modified programs designed for different species." "What do you mean by modified?" Yuna asked. "Well, for example, a Velith might practice endurance training in point .8G rather than their normal point .6G environment. Small increases, carefully monitored, could provide health benefits. And you could design these programs." Yuna thought about it. She'd have been hired as a fitness instructor for the human embassy staff, but this would be something bigger. Cross-species fitness training. It was an interesting challenge. "I need to study the different species first," she said. "Understand their physiology, their limits, their needs. I can't just apply human methods to everyone." "Of course," Queller agreed. "We would provide you with access to all our medical databases and consulting experts. You would be a pioneer in this field." She accepted the position. Within a week, she had her first non-human student. It was Trixley, the young Velith who wanted to study her for his thesis. He showed up to the gym wearing a new support exoskeleton and looking both excited and terrified. "I want to try human training," he announced. "Even if it's the modified version. For my research, but also because I want to understand." They started very simply. Station gravity was already 1.2G, which was heavy for a Velith. Yuna had him do basic movements, walking steadily for 5 minutes, some gentle stretching, careful arm raises, things that would be warm-up exercises for a human were a serious workout for him. After 30 minutes, Trixley was exhausted but happy. "I can feel my heart working," he said, his translator making his buzzing sound like wonder. "My people don't usually push ourselves like this. We evolved in easy conditions. But there's something satisfying about effort." More students followed. A crystalline Lythran who wanted to improve her structural integrity. A furred Calvorian who's training to be an emergency responder and needed more endurance. Even a few humans from other parts of the station who had heard about Yuna's classes. The gym became an unexpected social hub. Beings from different species worked out side by side, each at their own level. Yuna moved between them, offering encouragement and adjustments. She learned more about alien physiology in 3 weeks than most xenobiologists learned in years. But not everyone was happy about the changes. Some species remained suspicious of humans. In the station's marketplace, Yuna overheard conversations that stopped when she approached. She saw the way some aliens moved to the other side of the corridor when humans passed by. One evening, she mentioned this to Minho while they were both getting dinner in the human section. "It's fear," Minho said. "Some species are afraid of us now. They see the strength demonstrations and imagine the worst. There are rumors spreading." "What kind of rumors?" "That humans can crush bones with their bare hands. That we're secret warriors preparing for conquest. That Earth sent us here as some kind of advance force." He shook his head. "Most of it is ridiculous, but fear doesn't care about logic. What do we do about it?" "We keep being ourselves," Minho said. "Kind, helpful, peaceful. Eventually, people will see that we're not dangerous. They'll judge us by our actions." Yuna tried to follow that advice. She went out of her way to be friendly and approachable. She helped an elderly Peltraxian carry shopping containers. She volunteered to assist with station maintenance tasks that required someone who could work in higher gravity. She spent hours answering Trixley's questions about human biology and culture. Slowly, things began to change. The fear didn't disappear completely, but it lessened. More aliens started coming to her fitness classes. Some came to challenge themselves. Others came simply because they were curious about humans, and this seemed like a safe way to interact. One of her regular students was a Growthwarian named Dexel, sent by Commander Varric as part of the training exchange. Dexel was massive and intimidating, but he had a surprising gentleness in how he moved. He struggled with the endurance exercises that came naturally to humans. "My people are sprinters," he explained one day after class. "We can charge forward with great power, but we tire quickly. You humans can just keep going. It's frustrating to learn, but also valuable." "Every species has different strengths," Yuna said. "Humans can run for hours, but we're not as strong in short bursts as you are. We're not as fast as some species. We can't fly or breathe underwater or process toxic atmospheres. We're just adapted for our own environment." "A wise perspective," Dexel said. "I will share this with my commander. Understanding differences is the path to respect." The training exchange program grew. More Growth came to learn from human instructors. In return, they taught humans about combat techniques and the use of leverage and momentum in heavy gravity conditions. Taiyang spent hours training with Varric, and the two became genuine friends despite their completely different backgrounds. Hyeri started a lecture series about human evolution, explaining to mixed-species audiences how Earth's conditions had shaped humanity. She talked about persistence hunting, tool use, and the development of endurance. The lectures were always packed. "We're becoming ambassadors just by existing," she told Yuna after one particularly well-attended session. "Every time we do something normal for us, we're teaching them about human capabilities. It's a big responsibility." 6 weeks after the demonstration, the Galactic Council held a special session to discuss human integration. The topics included updated safety guidelines, facility access permissions, and official recognition of human physical capabilities. Ambassador Quan presented Earth's perspective. "We don't want special treatment," he said. "We just want to be understood. Humans are different from many species here, but we're committed to being good neighbors and partners. We'll follow reasonable safety protocols, but we also need to be trusted to know our own limits." The council debated for hours. Finally, they reached several decisions. Humans would be granted expanded access to high-gravity facilities. New safety guidelines would be written that acknowledged different species' capabilities. And most importantly, there would be increased funding for cross-species education programs. COUNCILLOR3, who had filed the original complaint, made a personal statement. "I was wrong to assume that human fragility matched their appearance. I have learned that strength comes in many forms. The Galactic Council's purpose is to bring species together, not to limit them based on misunderstanding. I welcome our human colleagues and look forward to learning more from them." The session ended with a standing ovation. Though several species couldn't actually stand, so it was more of a generalized gesture of approval. That evening, Yuna's fitness class was larger than ever. Trixley had brought 3 of his fellow students. Dexel brought 2 more Growth warriors. Even Prexel, the maintenance worker who had first panicked about Yuna's. 6 months had passed since what everyone now called the jogging incident. Yuna tied her running shoes and smiled at the memory. It seemed impossible that her simple morning exercise had changed so much, but the evidence was everywhere. The high-gravity facility had been completely redesigned. Half of it was now marked as human standard environment, with sections ranging from 1.8G to 2.5G for training purposes. The other half remained extreme gravity zones for the Growth and a few other heavy world species. Most importantly, the access restrictions had been updated with actual knowledge of what different species could handle. Yuna walked through the facility's main entrance and waved at the attendant. It was no longer the bored multi-eyed being from her first visit. Now it was a human named Soman who worked the morning shift. "Big class today," Soman said. 15 students signed up, including 3 new ones from that trade delegation that just arrived. "Sounds good," Yuna said. "Are they in the prep room?" "Already warming up." Yuna's cross-species fitness program had become one of the most popular activities on the station. She now had regular students from 22 different species, each working at their own level. Some, like the Volith students, focused on basic endurance in slightly elevated gravity. Others, like the Growth warriors, trained in techniques for maximizing efficiency in extreme conditions. The program had expanded beyond just her. Hyeri now taught yoga and flexibility classes adapted for different body types. Taiyang ran a self-defense course that combined human martial arts with techniques from other species. Even Jiho had gotten involved, teaching proper lifting and carrying methods for cargo, workers of all kinds. But the biggest change was in how humans were viewed across the station. The fear and suspicion had mostly faded, replaced by respect and curiosity. Humans were now seen as natural candidates for any job that required physical endurance or work in difficult conditions. This shift had affected Earth's position in the Galactic Council significantly. Ambassador Quan spent his days in meetings about new opportunities. Human security personnel were in high demand. Human engineers were being recruited for construction projects on heavy gravity worlds. Human medical staff were valued for their ability to work long shifts without tiring. "We've gone from newcomers to essential members in less than a year," Quan had said at the last embassy staff meeting. "That's unprecedented in council history." Yuna finished her morning class and was cooling down when Minho found her. He looked excited and worried at the same time. "We have a situation," he said. "A big one." The ambassador needs you and Taiyang in his office immediately. In Quan's office, a holographic display showed a distant star system. A red marker pulsed on one of the planets. This is Gravitas Prime, Quan explained. It's a 6G world, mostly uninhabited. 3 days ago, a cargo ship crashed there during an emergency landing. The crew survived, but they're trapped. The ship's hull is breached, and their emergency shelter won't last more than another 48 hours. Why haven't they been rescued? Yuna asked. Because 6G is beyond what any species in the area can handle, Minho said. The Potraxians can't even stand in 2G. The Lythran would shatter. Even the Growth can only function in 6G for a few minutes with their best support equipment. Every rescue attempt has failed, but humans, Taiyang said slowly, could potentially conduct the rescue, Quan finished. It would be difficult and dangerous. 6G is more than 3 times Earth's gravity. You'd be pushing human limits. But the Galactic Council has officially requested our help. You'd be volunteering, not ordered. Yuna looked at the display. Somewhere on that planet, people were dying. Species didn't matter in situations like this. They needed help, and humans could provide it. I'll go, she said. So will I, Taiyang added. Me too, said a voice from the doorway. It was Jiho. I heard you talking from outside. If this is a rescue mission, you'll need someone who can carry people. That's my job. Quan looked at them for a long moment. You understand this is extremely dangerous. 6G is crushing. If something goes wrong, we understand, Taiyang said. But we're the only option they have. The rescue team assembled quickly. In addition to Yuna, Taiyang, and Jiho, 2 more human security officers volunteered. Medical Officer Prin insisted on coming too, even though she would have to stay on the rescue ship in normal gravity. Commander Vorak arrived with a squad of Growth warriors who wanted to help, though they knew their role would be limited. We will prepare the equipment and provide support from orbit, Vorak said. But the surface work will fall to you. Go with honor, friends. The journey to Gravitas Prime took 2 days. During that time, the team trained constantly in the ship's 6G simulation chamber. It was agony. Every movement required enormous effort. Breathing was difficult. Even standing still was exhausting, but they could do it. Slowly, carefully, for limited periods. They could function. When they reached the planet, the situation was worse than expected. The crash ship was in a canyon, making aerial extraction impossible. The rescue team would have to land nearby, walk to the crash site, extract the survivors, and carry them back to the shuttle. 2 kilometers across 6G terrain while carrying injured people, Jiho said, reviewing the plan. This is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. They landed at dawn, local time. The moment the shuttle door opened and they stepped onto the planet's surface, the gravity hit them like a physical blow. Yuna's knees buckled. She caught herself, straightened, and took a careful breath. The rescue suits they wore helped, but only a little. The suits had powered exoskeletons, but they couldn't fully compensate for 6G. They just made the impossible slightly less impossible. Radio check, Taiyang said. Everyone confirmed their communications were working. Okay, slow and steady. If anyone feels like they're going to collapse, say so immediately. We moved together. The walk to the crash site took over an hour. Each step had to be calculated. They couldn't afford to fall. In 6G, a simple stumble could break bones. Sweat poured down Yuna's face inside her helmet. Her heart hammered in her chest. Every muscle in her body screamed, but she kept moving. They all did. The crash ship was a wreck. The survivors, 6 aliens from 3 different species, huddled in an emergency shelter. When they saw the rescue team approaching, they started making sounds of disbelief. Humans? One of them said through their translator. They sent humans? But you'll die in this gravity. We're tougher than we look, Taiyang said. Can everyone move? 3 of the survivors had broken bones and couldn't walk. The rescue team would have to carry them. Jiho took the heaviest one, a Growth trader who weighed over 600 pounds in normal gravity. In 6G, he effectively weighed nearly 2 tons. Jiho positioned himself carefully, lifted, and nearly collapsed. He caught himself, adjusted, tried again. This time, he managed it. The Growth survivor was on his back, secured in a carrier harness. Emperor's strength, the Growth whispered. You're actually doing it. The return journey was a nightmare. Every meter was a battle. Yuna carried a smaller survivor who still felt impossibly heavy. Her legs trembled. Her vision swam. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Just one more step. Then one more. Then one more. Taiyang fell once. He caught himself on his hands and knees, the survivor on his back, crying out in fear. Slowly, agonizingly, Taiyang pushed himself back up. He kept going. They made it back to the shuttle after nearly 2 hours. As soon as they were aboard and the door sealed, the gravity returned to normal. Everyone collapsed. Yuna lay on the floor, gasping, unable to move. Her whole body was one huge ache. Medical Officer Prin worked quickly, scanning everyone. Severe muscle strain, dehydration, bone microfractures in Jiho's legs. But everyone will recover. You did it! The survivors were crying. The Growth trader that Jiho had carried kept trying to thank him, but Jiho was too exhausted to respond. He just gave a weak thumbs up from where he lay on the floor. The news of the successful rescue spread across the galaxy, even faster than the demonstration video had. Humans had done what no other species could. They had walked into hell and brought people home. The Galactic Council issued a commendation. There were ceremonies and speeches. But for Yuna and the team, the real reward was simpler. They had saved lives. That was enough. 2 weeks later, Yuna was back to her normal routine. Morning jog in 5G. Teaching classes. Helping Trixley with his thesis, which was nearly finished. Life on Nexus 7 had settled into a new normal. She finished her run and exited the gravity chamber. As always, there was a crowd of aliens watching through the observation windows. What had once been a source of panic was now a tourist attraction. Some of them waved at her. She waved back. Hayari was waiting outside with 2 cups of coffee. They walked together to the station's garden district, where plants from 100 different worlds grew under carefully controlled conditions. I heard you're thinking about training for a 0G marathon, Yuna said. Hayari grinned. I am. They're hosting one on the Kelvarian orbital platform next year. Completely weightless running. I want to see what humans can do in 0G compared to species that evolved in it. Let me guess. You think we'll be surprisingly good at it? The humans are surprisingly good at most things. We're adaptable. That's our real strength,